Welcome to the latest episode of Helping Challenging Children. I'm Dr. Pat McGuire. I have heard a lot of parents feel that they need to not praise their children, but rather let them know when they need to do better. Now, that can be important, but it's how we do it that makes a difference between a healthy child and one who will end up as an adult with many both physical and mental health problems. I have known parents who feel that the only way their child's going to get better is if they're always on their case. If they're always saying, you know you can do better, you're just not trying. Or why can't you be more like your brother or your sister? Or you're never going to amount to anything if you keep this up. And yet they never acknowledge the effort that the child is making. Like, okay, I noticed that you were able to get half your room cleaned up. What can we do to get the other half cleaned up? Parents and a lot of professionals feel like this is not necessary and it's coddling. But research on the brain has shown that all individuals need positive reinforcement, positive phrases, and a sense of attachment or connectiveness. If we don't provide this, it can affect the development of the brain and lead to long-term negative outcomes for adults. There was a recent study done by a group that published in Acta Psychiatrica Scandinavia that reviewed 97 studies looking at personality disorders and found that children who were victims of adverse childhood experiences or abuse were 13.9 times more likely to have a very common personality disorder that was called borderline personality disorder. Now that is kind of scary to think that if you spend a child's youth telling them how bad they are or how worthless they are or that they'll never amount to anything, and you add into that possibly physical abuse, which some parents see as just a form of corporal punishment, you're increasing the risk of a child who is going to be a major burden on society who would otherwise have been an asset to society. Do you know what signs of a personality disorder look like, especially borderline personality? Because you're not going to see them in the kids. You see them when they start hitting late adolescence to adulthood. And I'm going to read the typical symptoms that came from the Mayo Clinic website, who also then obtained those from the DSM-5, which is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, 5th edition. See if any of them sound familiar to any adults you know. So like I said, I'm going to read it just because I want to get it right. And I think it's important for you to understand how actions in childhood can lead to adverse outcomes in adulthood. The first one is impulsive and risky behavior, such as unsafe sex, gambling, or binge eating. Do you know people have a problem with binge eating? Unstable or fragile self-image. They're always putting themselves down or always seeing themselves as being unworthy. Unstable and in intense relationships. So they are very clingy. They can end up almost stalking somebody. Up and down moods, often as a reaction to interpersonal stress. They're just very unpredictable. They can blow up without understanding why at the littlest thing. Suicidal behavior or threats of self-injury. I think that's self-evident what that means. Intense fear of being alone or abandoned. Ongoing feelings of emptiness. Frequent intense displays of anger. Stress-related paranoia that comes and goes. Do any of these sound like people you know? Do you happen to know if their childhood was a little bit stressful, like maybe the parents were impossible to please? This is the risk that happens when parents don't understand the 3 layers of children, or when professionals don't understand it. You can see this happen with teachers that feel like they can't give the kids an inch. There still is, although not as often, but there still is an attempt to do what's called assertive discipline, which historically has meant starting out telling these kids, I'm going to catch you failing. As soon as I catch you failing, I'm going to put your name on the blackboard. And then I'm going to put a check mark next to it. And then for each check mark after that, something's going to happen. Or the system of red, yellow, green lights. Most kids don't start with a green on their desk. They start with nothing, and then they get notified as things are going downhill and eventually try to work their way back up to green. But this is tough because the kids they're on edge. They don't know what the next disaster, the next mistake is going to be. Now that's where paranoia can come in. That's where feelings of emptiness and low self-worth come in. And if it's not balanced out, these kids go on to have a higher risk of mental and physical disorders. So as you work with kids today, either as a parent or as a teacher or as a child care provider, think about how you're approaching these kids. Are you being authoritative, which means being very clear about what's expected and being both positive in acknowledging progress or attempts and being consistent in holding up to the expectations that you have set out for the child? Or are you being authoritarian, which means that you're just waiting for the next misstep? The child who forgot to tie their shoe, and then you tell them that they're just looking to get hurt. Or the child that forgets to close the door all the way, and that they're just trying to make you go broke with heating bills. How are you interacting with children? Because that can cause an increase in their ACE, or Adverse Childhood Experience score. And like I said, these ACEs aren't card games. These ACEs are life scores and how your life is going to turn out. Now, you can balance it out. You can start giving more of the positive, but don't make it empty positive. Acknowledge a recognition of the process. Okay, I see that you've started cleaning your room. Hey, you've started your homework. It looks like you've already taken your shower. Great. These are simple things. And believe it or not, it does take more effort to find the positive than the negative, but it's worth so much more. So go out there and start finding the positive in children. Help them recognize what they're doing right, what progress they are making. You can help heal the future by being kind to the present. Talk to you later.